The sun hung low over the vast expanse of the ranch, casting long shadows across the dry, golden grass. Daniel rode slowly through the heavy wooden gates, the creak of iron hinges echoing across the quiet land. Dust swirled around his boots as he dismounted, brushing sweat from his brow and squinting against the sharp glare of the afternoon sun. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the earthy scent of the plains, and muttered under his breath, "Spread it open. Do it with force." The words of the old real estate agent echoed in his mind, urging him to clear the fields, push through the stubborn land, and transform this wild, untamed property into something prosperous. Daniel walked through the tall grass, his fingers trailing along the tops of golden stalks, feeling the texture of the land beneath his hands. Each step seemed to press him further into a dream he hadn't allowed himself to imagine in years. Fences stretching for miles, barns standing solid against the wind, and cattle grazing freely under the open sky. For the first time in a long while, a spark of hope lit inside him. This ranch wasn't just a purchase. It was a promise, one of hard work, of a fresh start, and of life itself slowly unfurling in a way he had almost forgotten. And though he didn't yet know it, this land would bring more than crops and cattle. It would bring a family, laughter, and a future he could finally call his own. Daniel wasted no time. From the first light of dawn, he was out in the fields, pushing through the stubborn overgrowth with unrelenting determination. The sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down on his broad shoulders as he hammered fence posts into the dry soil, each strike echoing across the open plains. Sweat ran down his face and stained his shirt, but he didn't stop. Knowing that every ounce of effort was shaping the future he had longed for, he hitched wagons full of supplies, hauling sacks of feed for the cattle and stacks of timber for the barn. Every movement, every swing of the axe or shovel, was a statement. This ranch would thrive no matter the cost. The earth pushed back against him, roots snagging boots and rocks forcing him to bend. But Daniel met the challenge with the patience of a man who had faced far worse and survived. By evening, he climbed a small rise overlooking the ranch, chest heaving and hands calloused. The horizon was ablaze with the fiery hues of sunset, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He let himself pause, taking in the transformation unfolding beneath his eyes, the fences he had built, the barn that now stood solid, and the land stretching out like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. And in that quiet, golden moment, Daniel thought of Emily. He thought of the tiny life growing inside her, a child who would one day run through these fields and call this place home. For the first time, he allowed himself to smile fully without restraint. The ranch wasn't just earth and timber, it was hope. It was family, and it was everything he had been waiting for. The wind whispered through the grass as if answering him, carrying with it the faint scent of wildflowers and the promise of life yet to come. Daniel took a deep breath, gripping the reins of his determination tightly, knowing that the work was only beginning, but so was everything else that truly mattered. Weeks slipped by, and the ranch began to take shape under Daniel's relentless effort. Fences stood tall and straight, marking boundaries where wild grass had once run unchecked. The barns, patched and reinforced, gleamed faintly in the morning sun, and a small herd of cattle grazed peacefully in the open fields, their lowing blending with the wind. Emily worked alongside him whenever she could, her hands dusty and strong, her face glowing from the sun and effort. She lifted feed, repaired fences, and learned the rhythm of ranch life with a determination that matched his own. Daniel watched her quietly one morning as she moved among the animals, her silhouette framed by the rising sun, golden light catching strands of her hair. There was a grace in her movements, a calm confidence that steadied him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He leaned against the rail of the corral, surveying the progress with a rare, contented smile. "Soon we'll have more than cattle on this ranch," he said softly, almost to himself. Emily looked up at him, a knowing smile tugging at her lips. She reached for his hand, her fingers brushing against his. "We already do," she said. "This place, it's becoming a home." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle warmly in his chest. The thought of their child, growing safe and happy among these fences and fields, filled him with a quiet awe. He imagined tiny footsteps running across the grass, laughter carried on the wind, and nights spent together by the fire, telling stories of the land they had built with their own hands. Spring had fully arrived, and the ranch was alive with color and sound. Flowers bloomed along the fences. The cattle grazed lazily in the warm sun, and the wind carried the scent of fresh hay and earth. Daniel stood in the yard, his hands still rough from work but steady, as Emily cradled their newborn child in her arms. The baby's soft coos and tiny movements seemed to fill the entire ranch with a new kind of life. Daniel knelt beside her, his heart swelling as he gazed down at the tiny fingers curling around his thumb. He felt a warmth he had never known, a mix of awe, responsibility, and love. The hardships, the long days of labor, the sweat and dust, it had all led to this single perfect moment. Emily looked up at him, her eyes glistening in the golden sunlight streaming through the barn doors. "We did it," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We made it. And now we're a family." Daniel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes," he said softly. "We built this together. And now this little one. This is what makes it all worth it." Around them, the ranch seemed to celebrate quietly. A calf's gentle bleat, the rustle of leaves, the distant lowing of cattle. It was no longer just a property. They had turned it into a home, a place of safety, growth, and love. Daniel carefully lifted the baby into his arms, feeling the fragile weight against his chest. He held the child close, a steady anchor in a world that had once felt so uncertain. He realized then that the ranch was no longer just land or livelihood. It was a legacy, a place where life and love intertwined, where hard work met hope, and where a father could finally understand the meaning of family.